Hey folks, it's Steve Wilmes and Matt Kita, and we're here with another episode of the Risk Control Show. Today we're talking about return on investment and not really on the finance piece, you can do those, but really
Right.
on the safety and risk control topics. And I think as we've had discussions with some insurers, reinsurers, this is a big challenge for people is understanding when they should invest in certain safety or risk uh, solutions, programs, equipment. And I think we just kind of even touched upon that in our last episode, which was, how do we look at this general duty clause and we got minor incidents and are we going to invest in that? Should we? And so this is a great topic for everyone to really understand. And I think, something that Matt and I discuss a lot is how do we speak the language of the people in charge in order to get what we need, not necessarily what we want, but what we absolutely need.
Right.
And Matt, you talk about it a lot in the fault versus responsibility. Do you have any input on the responsibility part of this calculation?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's being proactive. It's you have a role to take care of something and to keep people safe and to provide that kind of security. And a lot of times that requires you to anticipate what those hazards are going to be, what your needs are going to be. And we've talked a little bit about this. We talked about this last week about how risk management is often regarded as a loss on the books for
Right,
people. So
right.
yeah, they don't think of it as this isn't going to generate profits for us. This is mitigating against potential losses. And people have a way of kind of putting it a little bit of lower priority because it isn't bringing the money in. Although the way I look at it, a money saved spends the same way as a money earned. Don't you agree, Steve?
Money spends is same as money earned.
Yeah, I said many money a dollar saved
Oh, is it? Oh,
by
yeah,
risk
money
management
saved. Yeah, money saved.
spends and it
It's
counts
actually,
just as
it's
good on a
actually,
ledger.
a money saved is actually better than money earned. Because you didn't have to work as hard for it.
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. It's if you turn your thinking around on risk management and understand that putting money into a safety program in the long run is going to save you more money, which essentially earns you money on your bottom line, then you can reframe that so that you understand the importance of doing that and doing that ROI calculation right.
Yeah, ROI calculation. Well, I have something to help with ROI calculation. I'm glad you brought that in. People may be thinking that, wow, they're really trying to sell this and push this. We have a safety cost benefit calculator on our website, and all you got to do is fill in the little bits of information here. Super simple. What's the safety measure? This just gives you a title. The lifespan of the safety measure. So many times we forget that part of the calculation, Matt. We forget that there's a lifespan, right? So you buy, let's just look at respirator cartridges, 8 hours, or sometimes if you don't unwrap them, 5 years. On our gas masks, things like that, or
Right.
hard hat, 5 years, fall harness. It could be one day if they fall. It could be 5 years if they never fall. Right?
Right.
What is the cost of that safety measure? And I think hard hats are a great example of this. You can go to your local hardware store, pick up a hard hat for $20, or you can go and get a Lift carbonized hard hat for $150 or $200. So the cost of the measure plays a big role in this. And then these are just the simple things, Matt, that I'm going through right now. But the next is the number of safety measures needed. So let's just put in here, 5 years, cost of the safety measures 150. Number of them we got 100 employees we need, or even 20, right? 20
Right.
employees that we got to cover. percentage of claims that the safety measure will prevent. And so here is where we really start to look at what is the benefit versus the cost, okay?
Right.
Let's just say that we have 20 claims a year that run us about $14,000 on average each, and we are going to prevent 20% of those, right? So we think that, just 20% of 20 claims at an average cost of $14,000. When we run that, it's going to take a look at it and tell us whether or not this is going to be a benefit. And as we can see here, just doing that, buying a $150 hard hat for 20 people, it may seem like a lot right out of the gate, but it's going to save us $53,000 in a single year, Matt. $53,000. That's incredible, right?
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
And so now the question becomes, if we were to put in a $20 hard hat, well, wow, our savings is even more. But let's say that our cost of our claim is only $1,000. Well, now it may take us multiple years to reap that benefit. And sometimes we get hard hats that may have a 5-year expiration or a 3-year expiration, and it doesn't quite pay for itself. So when we look at this ROI, I think it's really important to understand that OSHA says, and I just love that. Here we go with OSHA again.
Can't escape them. They're always there.
OSHA says $4 to $6 per dollar invested, right? So that's what they're saying. For every dollar you invest in safety, you will save $4 to $6. And that's just not true. That's just not true.
I would love to see the data behind that to understand where it comes from.
Well, it's just not true. Again, if we look at that where we don't have any claims, or maybe the types of treatment is very, very small. Not that you shouldn't invest in safety, but don't expect that every safety measure that you do is going to save you $4 to $6. And that's where we talk about economies of scale, and we talk about a big one here, which is this concept of diminishing returns, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of people really don't factor that component in, which is diminishing returns. So if I have a safety procedure, for example, hard hats, right? I go, okay, that's going to prevent, generally, it's going to prevent probably 60% of all your claims. If something really heavy hits them on the head, they're probably still going to have a little neck injury or something like that. They're not going to necessarily have a cracked skull, but they're still going to have some injury. Okay, so 60%. And then I go, well, I need to have a toe board on my scaffolding or whatever. Okay.
Right.
So that's great. You know what else we could do, Matt? We could put in some tool leashes. So we could buy everybody a tool leash. Okay, now we have 3 measures in there. So what's the 4th measure that we're going to do? In addition to a tool leash, we're going to add in a magnetic, strap so that if it does get away, it snaps back, right? Okay, perfect. Right. And then we go, well, you know what we could do? We could put in a safety net underneath. Well, on the first 4, I've already...
Wait. When do we invest in a program to reverse gravity?
Yeah, right. Hey, it's safety. We're putting $1 in. Put $1 million into it. I put $1 million into it, Matt. I'm going to save $6 million. Yeah. When that's the whole point. And that's where things get out of control. And I can remember trying to deter, there was a colleague of mine, you know him actually. We were working at JPA, and we were talking about vehicle accidents, and we had numbers. I mean, we had some real serious vehicle accidents. And we knew the number of vehicles that we insured. We went through and we were looking at conspicuity tape and this and that. And, we put together kind of a holistic approach. And our numbers were good, right? Our return on investment would be good. But at some point, like you could really go all out and you could invest $4 million in safety, and you're just never going to get that return because that it's not there. It just isn't there. But when you start layering these on, then you have to ask yourself, okay, how much is that one going to reduce on top of? So when you go back to our safety calculator, you need to look at each measure independently and then really back out. Like if you want to do multiple measures, maybe we'll add that to the calculator, Matt, is if you're going to put in multiple measures, what that looks like. But again, we can go with all kinds of safety measures, but really trying to evaluate what that effect is on the bottom line. So remember, as you start to reduce your claims over the years and the average claim cost, then you have to take that into account as you look into the future about what the reduction in those are going to be, right? So once you put in a measure, how effective is that? But you also have to understand what is the average cost of that outside your organization. If you haven't had any in a while, if you do have one, you may be paying that anyway, right?
Right.
So, return on investment, again, Matt, comes back to that language that we speak and things like this. So, let's talk a little bit about how we convince upper management of our needs.
Well, I touched on it a little bit earlier about the need to reframe the conversation. Because again, when you're running an organization, a lot of times it comes down to the dollars and the cents, and you're either bringing money in or you're not spending money. Those are the two ways to gain money, to be positive on the ledger. And risk management tends to fall under the second one. So the thing is, if you're coming into that meeting with them and talking to them about saving them this money, they're already coming at it from a kind of a negative perspective. Maybe negative is too strong a word.
Yeah, maybe too strong.
But it's their inclination is, okay, this isn't a massive opportunity that's going to bring in new business. That this is actually just cutting some costs on the back end. That's the way they think about it. So it becomes really important for you to reframe that conversation and get them to understand, again, like I said earlier, a dollar saved is the same as a dollar earned. Or as Steve said, a dollar saved is even better than a dollar earned.
Yeah, it is. Well, and I think back to your point of, okay, when we talk, you're talking about private entities where they actually have sales and they actually have revenue generators. If you're in a public agency, your revenue generation is for school, ADA, how many kids do you have in there, right? So they got to bring in more children. If you're looking at a city, sales tax, property tax, those types of things, there's caps on that. People aren't going to vote to continue to raise their taxes for your $4 million safety program that doesn't do anything. So when we look at it in a public agency, risk management, loss control, safety are all cost centers. They're not profit centers, as you indicated, Matt.
Right.
Right. And you have to understand that. Like, you have to be really prudent about the types of equipment that you're putting in. Ergonomics is a huge one under this. It's a can of worms in a lot of respects. As soon as you open it, you're all over the board. And so a lot of times the best way to deal with all the ergonomic equipment that you have to purchase is to go ahead and outfit every desk at once, so you get the economies of scale in order to reduce the probability of the ergonomic issues, and that's one that you just see all kinds of equipment that is constantly being bought and never really fully utilized and really doesn't do much of anything. So you have to be mindful of, oh, people want to sit, stand, desk. Well, what's it do?
Right.
What's it
Right.
do? There are certain circumstances where I'll recommend that, but a lot of times it's overkill. It's a lot of money for nothing. And people don't understand that, yeah, you have a sit stand workstation, but it transfers a problem to another area of the body, and it really doesn't
Yes.
avert the claim cost itself. So training is good. But ROI, again, return on investment. What are you investing? Don't buy into this notion of the $4 to $6 for every dollar invested. That is
Yes.
where you have done nothing. You are picking all the right equipment. It's got good lifespan. It actually reduces it. People utilize it. Those types of things. So when we look at it, we have to really understand that the equipment itself, the safety measures, safety programs have to have the buy-in. They have to be refreshed. They have to be used. And I think looking at a hard item like hard hats, our safety glasses, our fire extinguishers are all important. There again, like your fire extinguishers, if you layer that, you look at your fire alarm system, smoke detectors, you look at your sprinkler systems, like where
Right.
you got so many things going on that you go, okay, what next, right? What do we put in next that's going to help with the
Right.
fires, right? And again,
Right.
like that's a lot of layered approaches, a lot of hurdles to get over before a fire starts. So we keep the candles out of the schools, we keep the open flame devices out of the schools, we put our oily rags into a metal can, right? These are simple things, but if a fire were to break out, the results of that could be catastrophic. We could be talking $10 million for one facility.
Yep.
So that $25 or $50 or even $100 that you spend on an oil can is very important, right? Our
Yep.
fire cabinets are very important. But when we look at things like, okay, we want to have all these safety meetings, or we're going to invest in the stretch program, we're going to invest in training. And we like to do training. Training's important, it's required, it's compliance. You need to do it on a routine basis. But the question becomes, do you need virtual reality training, which is cool and fun and new and hip and all that,
Right.
which costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money for your computers to run it. You have to buy devices in order to do it, versus a hands-on training or even an online training. Where's the bang for the buck? And
Yep.
so I think that's the next one. We're seeing some of our clients are like, oh, hey, can you do virtual reality training? And just the online training with public
Yeah.
agencies is hard enough because software systems are outdated, platforms don't run on everything, people don't know how to log in. Like, you put
Yeah.
this virtual reality device on them and you have them go through this. I've just heard a lot. It'll get there, of course, but
Yeah. Yeah.
right now you have to look at what's the return on it. So we put that calculator out there so you have a little bit of things to look at. We will be offering a course on this that goes into a lot more detail here shortly on the return on investment. And I think that's really where you can learn a lot more of how to look at these things, all these little factors again, and just
Right.
think about, like, on the easy ones, the safety measures, the hard tangible physical assets. There is super high quality, then there's good enough, and there's that in between, and you have to evaluate all those things, right?
Yep.
Ladders, for example, fall harnesses. Do you need the $500 fall harness, or will the $150 fall harness do well enough?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like you mentioned with the hard hats before, $20 or 150. Well, if the $20 will protect you from almost every incident that the 150 will, then why would you buy the 150?
Right.
I mean, was it, like you said, you got to do that calculation. Maybe there's one or two incidents that aren't going to be covered by that $20 hard hat, but you have 30 or 40 that are wiped out by it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense to buy the 150 for just those one or two incidents.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you gotta think about that, and do that. Like, look at your options and then consider each option, what the ROI is on each one, and then make the appropriate choice.
Yeah. And I'm looking for, I want to bring this up real quick. So that's a great point. I was just looking for one of the things that we're going to be doing here. And, oh, yeah. So OSHA goes into cost multipliers. Oh, I want to talk about the risk adjusted. And that's really what we're looking at. And that is that if you get the same level of return on investment. So let's say we have two different measures that we're going to implement, Matt. Right?
Okay.
We have let's say the safety netting, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have the tool leash, right?
Okay.
And we go, okay, we're getting the same ROI. They're approximately the same cost to implement. I know in reality they're not, but let's say they are. Right. Then we have to look at what is the risk involved with that measure. So now we have to drill holes into our building. We have to work at heights to install the safety net, right? So there's a greater degree of risk in property damage and also in worker safety to implement that solution. And this is what we call risk adjustment. And so the lower the risk means it's a better option for us when we look at ROI. So that's a lot of different things that we'll be doing. There's a couple other formulas that are out there, the Sharp and the Trainer ratios, that we'll talk about too in our class. And how that helps us look at certain financial risks that we may put into place and things like that. But there's a lot of other risks to evaluate with that, and that is how long the employees will be there doing that type of work. What's the cost of everyone's training? What's the replacement cost of an employee? And that's one that we often overlook. So, hey, if I lose you, Matt, what's it going to cost? I mean, 3 years of training and all this that you've been out there. Like, if I got to bring someone in that's newer, then how do we do that? What's our reputational risk, right? So that can play a lot right into employee replacement. Are you the kind of company that everybody wants to come work for? Or are you the company that everybody wants to avoid, right? And so, we're looking at that right now with one of our clients. They're doing a big water main replacement project, and the fall protection, the confined space rescue equipment has to be purchased because the tripod is not going to be large enough to cover the spread of the hole that they're going into. And so just this davit system is over $10,000. And they the last time that this project was done was 1912. It's over 100 years ago.
Wow, right? I didn't hear it was that long.
That's 1912. It was 1912. Wow. 1912.
That was 2 pandemics ago.
Right? So when you're looking at that, is it worth it? Well, when we evaluate the cost and the risk of those employees that are going to be doing this, yeah, it is, because the amount of their life, it's very, very, very serious work. And then we look at what else that davit system can be used. They can use that where they can use a tripod. So, it's a little more to set up and stuff, but it's a great system. So anyway, we'll be covering some of those, the different risk formulas. ratios that are out there, and then also, some of the multipliers, the adjustments that need to be made. ROI is not really that simple,
Yeah.
But if you start to use that language, which I think was where we were starting with this, is using the language that upper management, CEOs, and city managers, county managers, boards will understand, superintendents. You have to really speak in dollars and cents. You have to show with your numbers that is going to work. You have to have some evidence of it. It's not just willy-nilly because I want to do it that it's going to help.
Right.
And so we get into a discussion of big data. We get into a discussion of claims data and all kinds of things. And it's too long for right now, but we'll put it into the
That'll
courses.
be another video.
Yeah, it'll have to be because it's just too big, Matt. It's too big. Well, with that, don't forget to check out us on Udemy and on our Dollar Training Club site, and check out our blogs on wilmes.co. And we're happy that you're here. Thanks. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. We'll be happy to take a look at them and get back to you. And don't forget to check out our cost calculator on wilmes.co.
Will do.